The training hall echoed with the clatter of equipment as cadets from across the galaxy prepared for another day of military exercises. Rin adjusted his exoskeleton armor, his compound eyes scanning the room with barely concealed arrogance. As a Kyric, he stood nearly 7 feet tall, his chitinous body gleaming under the harsh lights of Highwatch Station. Around him, his classmates represented the finest warriors their species could offer. Pella's crystalline form refracted light into dancing patterns as she calibrated her energy weapon. The lumen moved with precise, calculated motions that spoke of a mind constantly analyzing every variable. Beside her, San floated in his mobile water tank, his tentacles manipulating controls with fluid grace. The Deepborn had traveled farther than most to attend the Galactic Military Academy, leaving the crushing pressures of his homeworld's oceans for the artificial environment of the station. Grell stood apart from the others, his thick fur bristling with anticipation. The Furrow were known throughout the galaxy as fierce predators, and Grell embodied every aspect of that reputation. His clawed hands flexed repeatedly as he waited for the day's instructor to arrive. Commander Hallex entered through the main doors, his own Kyric body marked with scars that told of decades of service. The room fell silent immediately. Every cadet knew that Hallex had survived campaigns that would be studied for generations. His mandibles clicked once, a signal for attention. "Today's joint combat exercises have been modified," Hallex announced, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Human cadets will not be participating in any scenarios involving direct engagement with other species." The silence broke into confused murmuring. Rin's antennae twitched with surprise. He exchanged glances with Pella, whose crystalline body pulsed with what he recognized as curiosity. "Commander, is this a permanent restriction?" Pella asked, her voice like wind chimes. "Until further notice, yes." Halex's response was clipped, offering no explanation. Grell's growl rumbled through the hall. "Are the humans injured? Is their equipment malfunctioning?" "The humans are perfectly healthy and their equipment is functional," Hallex said. "This decision comes from High Command. That is all you need to know." Rin couldn't contain himself. "Commander, with respect, how are we supposed to learn interspecies combat coordination if an entire species is excluded? The humans are supposed to be from some death world, right? Earth. If they can't handle basic training exercises, why are they even here?" Several cadets chittered and growled in agreement. San's tentacles swirled in his tank, creating small whirlpools that reflected his agitation. Halex's compound eyes fixed on Rin with an intensity that made the young cadet's certainty waver. "The restriction is not negotiable. You will conduct your exercises without human participation." Dismissed. As the cadets dispersed to their assigned areas, the complaints grew louder. Rin gathered his usual group near the equipment lockers, his voice dripping with contempt. "This is ridiculous. We've all heard the stories about Earth. Primitive world, basic technology, barely space-worthy when the Council found them, and now they're too fragile for training." He manipulated a holographic display, pulling up basic information about humanity. "Look at this. They have no natural armor, no venom, no enhanced senses. They're just soft bipeds who got lucky." Pella examined the data with her analytical mind. "Their gravity is higher than standard, and their atmosphere has significant oxygen content. That technically qualifies Earth as a death world, but barely. The Kyric homeworld has similar classifications." "Exactly," Rin said triumphantly. "If they're supposed to be these great death world survivors, why ban them from exercises? It doesn't make sense unless they've been failing catastrophically." Grell's laugh was harsh. "Maybe they broke down crying during simulations. Some species just aren't built for military service." Through the reinforced windows of the training hall, they could see into an adjacent facility. Human cadets moved through their own exercises, separate from the mixed species groups. The aliens watched with growing contempt. A human female ran through an obstacle course with steady, unremarkable speed. Another group practiced hand-to-hand combat techniques that looked elementary compared to the complex martial forms the other species employed. Nothing about their training suggested any particular skill or danger. "They look bored," San observed, his aquatic voice bubbling through his tank's speakers. "Like this is beneath them." "More likely it's all they can handle," Rin scoffed. "Notice how they're not using live ammunition. Probably can't handle the stress." Pella continued analyzing the humans through the window. "Their movements are controlled, efficient, but nothing exceptional. I don't understand why High Command would issue such a specific restriction unless there were incidents." "That's exactly what I think," Rin said, his plan forming. "There must have been failures, injuries maybe, or psychological breakdowns, and Command is covering it up to save face. They admitted humans too quickly and now they're dealing with the consequences." The group watched as one of the human instructors demonstrated a disarming technique. The movement was smooth but unremarkable. The human cadets replicated it with adequate precision, nothing more. "We should file a formal petition," Grell suggested. "Demand transparency. If the humans can't meet Academy standards, that affects all of us. Our certifications could be questioned if we graduate alongside failures." Pella's form brightened with approval. "A logical approach. We frame it as concern for program integrity." Rin's mandibles spread in what his species considered a smile. "And if the humans are forced to participate and fail publicly, it proves our point. We're not being cruel, we're maintaining standards." San's tentacles waved agreement, disturbing the water in his tank. "When do we submit it?" "After today's exercises," Rin decided. "We'll document our performance, show what proper cadets can accomplish, then contrast it with the humans hiding in their separate facility. The evidence will speak for itself." The group dispersed to their training stations, confidence radiating from every movement. Around them, other cadets had reached similar conclusions. The humans were weak, clearly unsuited for the rigors of military service, and the ban was a transparent attempt to hide their inadequacy. In the separate facility, visible through the windows but isolated by walls and command decisions, the human cadets continued their exercises. They moved with careful precision, each motion controlled, each breath measured. Their instructor called out corrections in calm tones, and the cadets responded with immediate adjustments. One of the humans, a young woman with dark hair pulled into a tight braid, completed her obstacle run and walked to the water station. She glanced toward the main training hall where the alien cadets were beginning their combat simulations. Her expression was neutral, almost studious, as she observed them for a moment before turning away. Commander Hallex watched from his observation post, his old eyes seeing what the cadets could not. He had reviewed the petition before it was even formally submitted. He knew exactly where this was heading, had seen it happen twice before with previous classes. The young always thought they knew better. They always demanded proof. His mandibles clicked softly, a sound of resignation mixed with grim acceptance. They would learn. The question was whether they would recover from the lesson. Some didn't. Some requested immediate transfers to stations where humans weren't present. Some left military service entirely. But the humans would remain separate. Not because they were weak, not because they failed. The ban existed for a reason that the cadets would understand soon enough, once they stopped listening to their arrogance and started paying attention to the careful silence of those who knew better. 3 days passed, and the petition gained momentum. Nearly 40% of the cadet class had signed the document demanding either full integration of human cadets or a detailed explanation for their exclusion. Rin carried the data tablet like a trophy as he moved through the station's corridors. The training exercises had gone exactly as he predicted. His squad dominated every simulation, moving with textbook precision through urban combat scenarios, hostage rescue operations, and defensive formations. The scores posted on the public boards showed clear superiority. Chirec tactical thinking combined with Lumen analytical support. Deep-born adaptability and furrow aggression created an almost unstoppable combination. Meanwhile, through those same windows, the humans continued their isolated routines. They ran. They practiced basic combat forms. They studied tactical manuals in quiet groups. Nothing about their behavior suggested the kind of excellence that would justify their presence at the galaxy's most prestigious military academy. Pella had taken to recording observations during her free time. Her species processed information differently than most, building vast networks of connected data points that revealed patterns others missed. She sat in the station's observation deck, her crystalline body dim with concentration as she reviewed footage from multiple angles. "What are you looking for?" San asked, maneuvering his tank closer. The Deepborn had developed a friendship with Pella based on their shared analytical nature. "Inconsistencies," Pella replied. "The ban makes no logical sense if the humans are simply underperforming. Command could remediate them, extend their training period, or dismiss them entirely. Instead, they're maintained in complete isolation with no explanation." "Maybe it's political," San suggested. "Earth is a new member of the Council. Could be favoritism, keeping them enrolled despite clear inadequacy to avoid diplomatic incidents." Pella's internal light pulsed, a sign she was processing the theory. "Possible, but look at this." She projected a hologram showing the human training facility's resource allocation. They're receiving the same ammunition allotments as active combat units, the same medical supplies, the same equipment maintenance cycles. For basic training, those numbers are excessive. San's tentacles curled with interest. They're preparing for something specific. "Or they've been through something that requires those resources," Pella countered. "I tried accessing historical training records. Everything involving human cadets from the past 2 years is classified above our clearance level." "That's unusual," San admitted. "Training records are typically public for review and analysis. It's how we learn from previous cohorts." Before Pella could respond, alarms blared through the observation deck. Both cadets immediately accessed the emergency channels, expecting a drill or perhaps a real crisis. Instead, they found themselves watching a live feed from the training halls. A mechanical failure had caused one of the combat simulation projectors to overload. Smoke poured from the device as cadets evacuated according to protocol. The incident was minor, already being contained by automated systems, but it provided an unexpected view into both training facilities simultaneously. The mixed species cadets moved in organized groups, following their emergency training. Squad leaders called out instructions. Everyone accounted for their team members. It was exactly how they'd been taught to respond. In the human facility, the response was different. The humans moved faster, with less communication but more coordination. They didn't form up into organized groups. Instead, they spread out, each taking a section of their facility and checking it systematically. 3 humans had medical kits deployed before the station's emergency responders even arrived. Another 2 had already isolated the damaged equipment's power supply. It was over in 90 seconds. The human facility was cleared, secured, and damage assessed, while the mixed species cadets were still conducting roll call in the corridors outside their training hall. Pella recorded everything. "Did you see how they moved?" "Like they'd done it 1,000 times, San said quietly. "That wasn't drill response, that was instinct." The observation deepened Pella's curiosity and Rin's contempt in equal measure. When she showed him the footage that evening, he dismissed it with a wave of his foreleg. "So they're good at running away from smoke. Impressive," Rin said sarcastically. "Maybe they should join the Fire Suppression Corps instead of the military." "They weren't running away," Pella insisted. "They were securing their environment, and they did it faster than any of our squads could have. Because they practice evacuating, Grell interjected, joining the conversation. Probably have to do it constantly when their inadequate equipment keeps failing. Rin clicked his mandibles in agreement. Exactly. We're overthinking this. The simplest explanation is usually correct. Humans are substandard cadets being protected by political decisions. Our petition will force command to either prove otherwise or admit the truth. The petition was formally submitted the following morning. Rin presented it during a general assembly, reading the carefully worded document that questioned program integrity while maintaining a veneer of concern for proper standards. 43 cadets had signed, nearly half the class. Commander Hallex received the petition without expression. His compound eyes scanned the document while the assembly hall remained silent. When he finished reading, he looked up at the gathered cadets. "Your concerns are noted," he said simply. "Request denied." The hall erupted. Cadets shouted questions and protests. Rin stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "Commander, with respect, we have a right to understand why an entire species receives special treatment. If there are legitimate reasons, share them. If there aren't, correct the policy." Hallex's mandibles spread slightly, and those who knew him well recognized it as a sign of internal conflict. He was quiet for a long moment, and the hall gradually fell silent again, waiting. "You want answers," Hallex said finally. "You believe you're ready for them. Very well. I will show you exactly why the ban exists. But understand this. What you will see is classified. You will sign non-disclosure agreements. You will undergo psychological evaluation afterward. And you will never discuss what you learn with anyone who hasn't been cleared for the same information." Rin felt a flicker of uncertainty but pushed it aside. "We accept those terms." "Do you?" Hallex's voice carried a weight that made several cadets step back. "Because 3 cadets from the previous class who saw what you're about to see requested immediate transfers off this station. 1 left military service entirely. Are you prepared for that possibility?" Pella's form brightened with determination. "We are, Commander." Hallex nodded slowly. "Report to Secure Briefing Room 7 at 2000 hours. Bring no recording devices. Tell no one where you're going. The session will be conducted under full security protocols." He paused, his old eyes scanning the assembled cadets. "And when this is over, you will understand why some questions are better left unasked." The cadets dispersed, a mixture of excitement and unease spreading through their ranks. Rin maintained his confident exterior, but Pella noticed the slight tremor in his antenna. Grell's fur had flattened against his body, a subtle sign of stress. Even San's usual fluid movements had become more agitated. Only Pella seemed unchanged, her analytical mind already racing through possibilities. Whatever they were about to see, it would finally provide the data she needed. Facts would replace speculation. Truth would emerge from mystery. She didn't notice the human cadet watching from a distance as they left the assembly hall. The young woman with the dark braids stood in a maintenance corridor, her expression carefully neutral as she observed the alien cadet's animated discussion. She turned away after a moment, heading back to the isolated human facility. Inside, her instructor waited. "They're going to see it, aren't they?" The cadet nodded. "Hallex just approved it, full viewing tonight." The instructor sighed. "They always think they're ready, they never are. Should we warn them?" "Would you have listened, before you knew?" The instructor's question hung in the air. The cadet was quiet for a moment, remembering her own first viewing, her own certainty that she understood what humans were capable of. "No, I wouldn't have believed it." "Neither will they," the instructor said, "until they see it for themselves." Secure Briefing Room 7 existed in a section of Highwatch Station that most cadets never visited. The corridors leading to it were unmarked, monitored by security systems that tracked every movement. Rin led his group through the maze of passages, following the directions Commander Hallex had provided. The room itself was smaller than expected. Padded walls, minimal furniture, and a large viewing screen dominated the space. What caught Pella's attention immediately were the medical stations positioned at regular intervals along the walls. Trauma kits, sedatives, emergency neural stabilizers. Equipment meant for serious psychological distress. This seems excessive for a training review, San observed, his tentacles moving nervously in his tank. Commander Hallex entered with 3 other instructors, all senior staff who had served in actual combat zones. They carried themselves with the careful control of individuals who had seen things that changed them permanently. "Sit," Hallex instructed, gesturing to the chairs arranged in a semicircle facing the screen. "Before we begin, you will each sign this." He distributed tablets containing dense legal documents. Rin scanned his quickly. Non-disclosure agreements, psychological liability waivers, acknowledgement that the material was classified at the highest levels of military intelligence. He signed without hesitation, his contempt for human weakness overriding any caution. The others followed suit. "What you are about to see," Hallex began, his voice taking on a formal tone, "is footage from a joint training exercise conducted 18 months ago. The scenario was a standard colony defense simulation. Mixed species teams defending a settlement against numerically superior hostile forces. The exercise was designed to test coordination, tactical thinking, and performance under pressure." "Sounds routine," Grell muttered. "It was supposed to be," Hallex replied. "Pay attention to the timestamp. The simulation begins at 0 hour. The lights dimmed. The screen activated, showing a training ground designed to replicate a small colonial outpost. Prefabricated buildings, defensive positions, and a mix of military and civilian zones. The defending force consisted of 20 cadets from various species, including 5 humans." Pella recognized the setup immediately. She had run similar scenarios dozens of times. The attacking force would come in waves, gradually increasing pressure until the defenders either held or broke. Success was measured by civilian casualties prevented and tactical objectives maintained. The human cadets looked ordinary. They checked their equipment with the same calm efficiency Pella had observed through the training facility windows. One of them, a male with short brown hair, was actually smiling as he talked with a Kyric cadet about optimal firing positions. "That's River," Hallex said, pausing the footage. "Top of his class in marksmanship and tactical analysis. Excellent team player, well-liked by his peers." He resumed the playback. "Watch what happens when the simulation progresses." The first wave hit. Enemy forces, played by advanced combat drones programmed with tactical AI, assaulted the perimeter. The defenders responded exactly as trained. Coordinated fire, mutual support, textbook defense. The humans fought alongside their alien teammates with competent precision. Nothing remarkable. The second wave increased pressure. The defenders adapted, shifting positions and consolidating their lines. 2 cadets took simulated wounds and were evacuated to the medical zone. Standard procedure. The humans remained calm, professional, effective. Rin felt vindicated. This is what you wanted to show us. Humans performing adequately in a basic scenario. Hallex didn't respond. His eyes remained fixed on the screen. The third wave brought a complication. Enemy forces breached the perimeter in 2 locations simultaneously. The simulation's civilian AI began broadcasting distress calls, screams, cries for help. The scenario was designed to add emotional pressure, testing whether cadets could maintain focus while innocent lives were theoretically at stake. The alien cadets in the footage responded with increased urgency but maintained their discipline. They fell back to secondary positions, establishing a tighter defensive perimeter around the civilian zone, exactly as doctrine dictated. The humans stopped moving. It was subtle at first. River stood completely still for perhaps 3 seconds, his head tilted slightly as if listening to something no one else could hear. The other human cadets had similar pauses, their bodies going rigid. Then River spoke, his voice cutting through the chaos of the simulation with absolute clarity. New priority, civilian protection. Brooks, take left approach. Danny, secure the medical station. Lynn, you're with me on rapid response. That's not standard formation, Pella said, leaning forward. No, Hallex agreed, it's not. What happened next made Rin's antenna flatten against his head. The humans moved differently. The casual professionalism vanished, replaced by something focused and intense. River didn't walk to his position. He ran at a speed that should have been impossible while carrying full combat gear. He reached the first breached perimeter point 15 seconds before any other cadet could have covered that distance. The enemy drones concentrated fire on him. Simulation rounds tagged him 3 times, hits that should have incapacitated him according to the exercise rules. River ignored the markers. He returned fire with accuracy that exceeded his previously recorded performance by 30%, eliminating 4 drones in as many seconds. He's breaking protocol, Grell said. Why isn't the simulation stopping him? Because the simulation monitors were overridden, Hallex replied. The human instructor authorized what they call Condition Red. It removes the safety limiters that force cadets to acknowledge simulated injuries. Brooks appeared on screen, moving through the rubble of the breached wall with movements that looked more like hunting than soldiering. He used debris as cover, but not in the way they'd been taught. He moved from position to position with perfect timing, exploiting split-second gaps in enemy observation. His fire was economical, precise, and utterly ruthless. A Lumen cadet in the footage tried to coordinate with him, calling out tactical suggestions. Brooks acknowledged with a single word, then completely ignored the advice, executing a maneuver that violated 3 different safety protocols but resulted in the destruction of an entire enemy squad. The simulation's AI adapted, increasing difficulty to compensate for the human's unexpected performance. More drones poured into the scenario. The alien cadets began taking heavy casualties, their defensive line crumbling under the assault. The humans didn't fall back, they advanced. River coordinated with the cadet called Lynn using nothing but hand signals and eye contact. They moved in perfect synchronization, covering each other's approaches without verbal communication. When Lynn took a simulated fatal wound, she didn't call out or collapse. She used her last moments to eliminate 3 drones that had River flanked, then calmly reported her status and crawled to cover. River's response was immediate. His face went expressionless, his movements became sharper, and his next engagement was brutal in its efficiency. He cleared an entire section of the battlefield alone, adapting to enemy tactics faster than the AI could compensate. How is he doing this? Pella whispered. The AI is military grade. It's designed to defeat veteran soldiers. Watch Danny, Hallex said, highlighting another human on the screen. Danny had been guarding the medical station. When civilian AI started broadcasting casualty reports, something changed in his body language. He set up a defensive position that should have been impossible for a single individual to maintain. When enemy forces attempted to overrun his location, he didn't retreat. He held the position through 17 separate assault waves, his ammunition expenditure so precise that he never ran dry despite being surrounded. The simulation escalated again. The AI deployed tactics meant for advanced training scenarios, maneuvers that required the defenders to have senior officer-level tactical knowledge to counter. The alien cadets were overwhelmed, paralyzed by the complexity of the evolving threat. Brooks analyzed the pattern in real time and called out a counter-strategy that involved splitting their remaining forces and executing what amounted to a controlled offensive within the defensive scenario. It was brilliant, aggressive, and completely against standard doctrine. It worked perfectly. The humans executed the plan with minimal communication, each adapting their role based on instantaneous assessment of battlefield conditions. They moved like a single organism with 5 bodies, anticipating each other's actions and filling gaps before they formed. The simulation's AI flagged critical errors. Human cadets were absorbing damage that should have killed them multiple times over. They were operating at cognitive speeds that suggested illegal enhancement drugs. Their tactics were so aggressive that the safety monitors began broadcasting warnings about dangerous behavior. The humans ignored everything except the objective. 37 minutes into a scenario designed to last 20, the simulation ended. Not because the defenders broke, because the enemy forces were completely eliminated. The objective was achieved with 0 civilian casualties and total tactical success. The screen showed the aftermath. The human cadets sat among the ruins of the training ground, covered in simulation markers indicating catastrophic injuries. River had 93 individual wound tags. Any one of them would have been fatal. He was laughing, breathing hard, his eyes bright with an intensity that made San physically recoil from the screen. "Did we overdo it again?" Brooks asked, his voice carrying clearly through the recording. River grinned. "Probably, but they're all safe." He gestured to the civilian AI units, still broadcasting their scripted gratitude. The footage ended. The lights came up. The viewing room was completely silent except for the soft bubbling of San's tank filters. Commander Hallex let the silence stretch. He watched the cadets' faces, seeing the shock, the confusion, and the beginning of understanding. Rin's antenna had gone completely flat, a chiric stress response that indicated profound disturbance. Grell's fur stood on end, making him appear twice his normal size. Even Pella, usually so controlled, had dimmed to barely visible luminescence. "That was 18 months ago," Hallex said quietly. "River and Brooks both graduated with highest honors. They're currently serving in the Frontier Defense Forces, protecting colonies from actual hostile incursions. Their combat records remain classified, but I can tell you they've saved more lives than most soldiers save in entire careers." "I don't understand," Rin said, his voice barely above a whisper. "How did they do that? The simulation should have stopped them. The rules should have forced them to acknowledge the injuries." "The rules are different for humans during condition-red scenarios," Hallex explained. "Because when you remove the safety limits, you see what they actually are, not what they've learned to pretend to be." "What do you mean pretend?" Pella asked, her analytical mind struggling to process what she'd witnessed. Hallex gestured to one of the other instructors, a grizzled veteran from a species called the Armored Ones, known throughout the galaxy for their physical durability. The instructor stepped forward. "I fought alongside humans in the Frontier Wars," the instructor said, his voice gravelly. "Before they joined the academy, before most of you were born, we were stationed on a mining colony that got hit by raiders. 20 of us against maybe 200 hostiles. We had good positions, better equipment, and we were holding. Then the raiders set fire to the residential section where the miners' families were sheltering." He paused, his armored plates shifting in what his species used to express deep emotion. "The human soldiers with us asked permission to engage. Our commander denied it. Too risky, too outnumbered, better to hold position and wait for reinforcements. The humans acknowledged the order." Another pause. "Then they went anyway." "They disobeyed direct orders?" Grell asked, shocked. "They did. 7 humans against 200 raiders, moving through fire and smoke to reach the civilians. We thought they were committing suicide. We prepared to recover their bodies." The instructor's voice dropped lower. "They extracted all 43 civilians without losing a single one. The raiders lost 74 soldiers trying to stop them. When the humans came back, they were covered in burns, their armor was destroyed, and they were still carrying children too scared to walk on their own." Hallex nodded. That incident was one of many that led to human integration into the galactic military structure, but it also revealed a problem. Humans don't have a combat mode, they have a protection mode. And when that mode activates, they don't respond to normal command structure. That's a liability, Rin said, grasping for his earlier certainty. Soldiers who won't follow orders are dangerous. They follow orders, Hallex corrected, until those orders conflict with their protective instincts. Then they make their own decisions. That's why they train separately. We need to teach them when to activate that intensity and when to restrain it. They need to learn control before they can be integrated into mixed species units. Pella's form brightened slightly as understanding began to form. The ban isn't to protect them, it's to protect us. Not exactly, Hallex said. The ban exists because when humans operate at full capacity, they trigger instinctive fear responses in most other species. You saw how you reacted to footage. Imagine experiencing it in person, in a training scenario where you're supposed to be working together. Most cadets can't maintain focus. They either freeze or flee. It compromises their own training. San's tentacles had curled tight against his body. I would have evacuated. If I'd been in that simulation with them, I would have abandoned my post. 70% of non-human cadets do exactly that the first time they see humans under condition red, Hallex confirmed. It's not cowardice, it's biology. Evolution programmed most species to recognize apex predators and respond accordingly. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on a world where almost everything was trying to kill them. They developed the ability to push past injury, past exhaustion, past rational self-preservation. When they access that evolutionary heritage, other species instinctively recognize something dangerous. He pulled up another file on the screen. This is the psychological analysis of the Kyrek cadet who worked with River in that simulation. Despite River never threatening him, despite them being teammates, the cadet developed acute stress responses. He couldn't be in the same room with River afterward. He requested transfer and eventually left military service entirely. Grell spoke up, his voice uncertain. But they seemed friendly. River was smiling, laughing after the simulation. He wasn't aggressive. No, he wasn't, Hallex agreed. Humans don't maintain that intensity constantly. They activate it when needed, then return to their baseline. But once you've seen what they're capable of, your brain doesn't forget. Every interaction afterward carries the memory of what they could become if circumstances demanded it. Pella processed this information, connecting it to her observations. That's why they move so carefully in the corridors, why their training appears basic and controlled. They're not incapable, they're restraining themselves constantly. Correct, Hallex said. Every human at this academy has undergone extensive psychological conditioning to develop that restraint. They learn to read other species' comfort levels. They practice moving in ways that don't trigger fear responses. They deliberately limit their performance in mixed company to avoid disturbing their peers. That seems like a waste, Rin said, though his earlier arrogance had completely evaporated. Why not just let them operate at full capacity? Because we need soldiers who can work in coalitions, Hallex explained. The galaxy's military forces are integrated by necessity. A human operating at full intensity is incredibly effective, but if their mere presence causes allies to malfunction, the overall tactical situation deteriorates. They need to learn when to unleash their capabilities and when to hold back. One of the other instructors activated another recording. This footage is from a real combat situation, declassified last month. Watch how trained humans integrate into mixed units. The screen showed an actual firefight, not a simulation. A mixed-species squad defending a research station against genuine hostile forces. The humans in the unit moved differently than River and his team had. They fought competently but not extraordinarily. They followed standard protocols, maintained formation, communicated constantly with their non-human squad mates. Then enemy forces breached the station's primary hull, and atmosphere began venting. The alarm systems indicated civilians trapped in the compromised section. The squad leader, a Lumen, began calling for evacuation procedures. One of the humans, a woman named Walsh, spoke calmly into the comm, requesting permission to attempt emergency extraction. The Lumen commander hesitated, clearly understanding what that request meant. Granted, condition yellow, maintain team cohesion. Walsh acknowledged and moved toward the breach. Her movements changed, becoming faster and more purposeful, but she maintained constant communication with her team. She coordinated with two other species to establish a rescue corridor, using their different abilities in combination. When she entered the compromised section, she moved with absolute confidence through conditions that would have killed most species in seconds. She extracted 9 civilians in 4 minutes, working with her non-human teammates to pass the rescued individuals through the damaged sections to safety. When she emerged, she was injured but controlled. She reported her status, received medical treatment, and returned to position. Condition yellow is partial activation, Hallex explained. Enough intensity to perform extraordinary actions, but with conscious control maintained. It takes years of training to achieve that balance. Most humans can't do it reliably until they've been in actual combat situations multiple times. The footage continued, showing the engagement's conclusion. The mixed-species squad working in harmony, with Walsh integrating seamlessly back into standard operations once the emergency passed. Her non-human teammates showed no fear, only professional respect for her capabilities. That's the goal, Hallex said. Humans who can access their full potential when needed while remaining effective team members. But achieving that requires isolation training first. They need to understand their own capabilities and learn to control them before they can be trusted in integrated units. Rin sat motionless, processing everything he'd witnessed. His entire framework for understanding human weakness had been inverted. They weren't weak. They were constantly practicing restraint. Their basic training wasn't evidence of limitation, but of extraordinary control. The exercises we run, Pella said slowly. The scenarios we dominate. If humans participated without restriction, what would happen? Hallex's mandibles clicked once. We ran that experiment once, early in the integration program before we understood the necessity of separation. A mixed squad in a standard urban combat scenario. The humans went condition red after simulated civilian casualties. They completed the objective in 6 minutes. 3 of the alien cadets suffered psychological trauma. 2 required medical intervention for panic responses. The program was nearly canceled entirely. But they're still here, San observed, his tentacles beginning to relax slightly. Because they're needed, Hallex said simply. The galaxy is a dangerous place. Threats exist that require soldiers capable of operating beyond normal parameters. Humans provide that capability, but only if we can train them properly. The ban exists to ensure that training succeeds. The viewing session concluded, but Hallex kept the cadets in the room for another hour, answering questions and providing additional context. The psychological counselors stood ready, but none of the cadets required intervention. They were shaken but processing the information rationally. The station felt different after the viewing. Rin walked through corridors he'd traveled 1,000 times, but now every detail seemed charged with new meaning. When he passed the human training facility, he stopped and actually watched instead of dismissing what he saw. The human cadets were running drills, simple, repetitive movements that looked almost meditative in their precision. One of them was River, the same cadet from the footage. He moved through a combat form with absolute control, each strike pulled, each movement contained. His face showed concentration but no strain. River noticed Rin watching and offered a slight nod. Just a casual acknowledgement between cadets. But Rin saw something else now. He saw the calculation behind River's eyes, the constant awareness of his surroundings, the careful measurement of how much space to give the Kyrek cadet so he wouldn't feel threatened. It made Rin feel small and ashamed. The petition disappeared from circulation without official comment. The cadets who had signed it quietly withdrew their support, and within 2 days the document was forgotten. But the knowledge remained, spreading through unofficial channels as the viewing's participants shared their experience with trusted friends. Pella spent 3 days in the Academy's archives, accessing every piece of human-related information her clearance allowed. She built comprehensive databases of human biology, psychology, and evolutionary history. What she found both fascinated and disturbed her. Humans had evolved on a world where survival required persistence, where giving up meant death, where protection of the group outweighed individual safety. Their biology reflected that history: high pain tolerance, efficient thermoregulation allowing sustained exertion, psychological resistance to despair and panic, the ability to function despite injury that would incapacitate most species. They were built to survive what shouldn't be survivable, and more importantly, they were built to protect others while doing it. San approached her on the 4th day after the viewing, his tank maneuvering carefully through the archive's narrow aisles. "I want to request integrated training," he said without preamble. Pella's form brightened with surprise. "After what we saw." "Because of what we saw," San corrected. "I'll never be as capable as a human in combat. My species wasn't designed for it, but I could learn from them. Learn how they think, how they assess situations, how they maintain function under impossible pressure. That knowledge would make me better, even if I can't replicate their physical capabilities." Commander Halleck said most cadets can't handle direct integration, Pella reminded him. "Most cadets haven't seen the footage," San argued. "They react from instinct because they don't understand what they're seeing. We understand now. We know what to expect. That knowledge might change how we respond." Pella considered this, her crystalline structure pulsing with thought. "It's worth proposing, though I suspect they'll refuse." They found Grell in the combat training area, working through exercises with unusual intensity. The Furrow's movements were aggressive, as always, but now they carried a different quality. He was pushing himself harder, trying to find his own limits. When they explained San's idea, Grell stopped mid-strike. "You want to train with them, after seeing what they become?" "Yes," San said simply. "Don't you want to understand how they do it?" Grell's lips pulled back, showing teeth. In his species, it wasn't quite a smile, but something close. "I want to learn if I can access even a fraction of that capability. My people are warriors. We pride ourselves on our combat prowess, but we've never developed anything like what humans can do. Maybe we can learn from them." "We should approach Commander Halleck's together," Pella suggested. "Present it as a formal request for advanced integration training. Acknowledge the risks but emphasize our informed consent." The 3 of them prepared a proposal over the next 2 days. Carefully worded, professionally formatted, and supported by psychological self-assessments demonstrating their readiness for the challenge. They submitted it directly to Halleck's office and waited. The response came faster than expected. Halleck summoned them to his office the following morning. When they arrived, they found him reviewing their proposal on his data terminal, his mandibles clicking in a rhythm they'd learned to recognize as consideration. "This is unusual," Halleck said, gesturing for them to enter. "Most cadets who see the footage want nothing to do with human integration. You 3 are requesting it." "We understand the risks," Pella said, "but we believe the benefits outweigh them. Learning to work alongside humans at their actual capability level would prepare us for real military service better than any standard training." Halleck studied them each in turn. "You realize this isn't about becoming as capable as humans. You can't. Your biology doesn't support it. This would be about learning to maintain your own function while witnessing theirs." "That's exactly what we want to learn," San said. Real combat won't pause because an ally's capabilities make us uncomfortable. Better to develop tolerance in training than fail in actual operations. And you, Grell, Hallex focused on the furrow. Your species has strong territorial and dominance instincts. Working with apex predators tends to trigger aggressive responses in furrows. Can you control that? Grell met the commander's gaze steadily. I don't know, but I'd rather find out here than in a combat zone where it could get someone killed. Hallex's mandibles spread slightly, the closest his species came to showing approval. Very well. I'll authorize a trial integration. 1 month, closely monitored. You'll join the human cadets for specific exercises, starting with low-intensity scenarios and escalating only if you demonstrate adequate psychological resilience. He pulled up a schedule on his screen. Report to Training Facility 7 tomorrow at 0600. The human instructor there is Lieutenant Morris. She specializes in integration training and has worked with multiple species. You'll follow her protocols exactly. Any sign of stress beyond your ability to manage and you're pulled from the program immediately. Understood. They acknowledged in unison, excitement and apprehension mixing in equal measure. One more thing, Hallex added as they turned to leave. The humans know you requested this. They've agreed to participate, but they have conditions. They want to start by explaining their perspective. Listen to what they say. They understand themselves better than we ever will. The next morning arrived too quickly and too slowly. Rin, who hadn't been part of the proposal, requested permission to observe. Hallex granted it, nodding that having witnesses might provide useful data for future integration attempts. Training Facility 7 was the largest of the human spaces, designed for full combat scenarios. When the 3 cadets entered, they found 5 human cadets already present, including River and Brooks. Lieutenant Morris stood at the center of the group, a human woman with gray-streaked hair and eyes that carried the weight of considerable experience. Thank you for requesting this, Morris began, her voice calm and professional. Most species don't want to understand us. They're content to keep us isolated and deploy us when needed, like weapons to be stored until required. You're willing to see us as teammates. That matters. River stepped forward. Before we begin any exercises, you need to understand something about how we think. When you watched that footage, you saw us operating at high intensity. You saw what looked like aggression, maybe even violence. But that's not what was happening internally. He gestured to Brooks, who continued the explanation. We weren't angry. We weren't in some kind of rage state. We were protecting. Every decision, every action, every risk we took was calculated around one principle: keep the civilians safe. Everything else was secondary. That's the core of human combat psychology, Morris added. We don't fight to destroy enemies. We fight to protect what matters. The enemy destruction is just a necessary step in that protection. Understanding that distinction is critical to working with us effectively. Danny, the 3rd human from the footage, spoke next. When you work alongside us in training, you're going to see things that trigger your instincts. We move fast. We take risks. We push past points where you'd expect us to stop. Your biology is going to tell you to flee or fight. We need you to recognize those impulses and manage them consciously. We'll start small, Morris said. Basic coordination drills with no combat elements. Learning to move together in the same space. Building familiarity. Only when you can maintain comfort during standard operations will we introduce stress factors. Pella appreciated the structured approach. What happens if we fail? If our instincts override our control? Then we pause, assess, and try again, Morris replied. This isn't a pass-fail scenario, it's training. The only failure would be not trying to improve. The first exercises were almost disappointingly simple. Moving through an obstacle course together, coordinating passage through narrow spaces, practicing communication protocols. The humans moved with careful deliberation, clearly restraining their natural speed and efficiency to match the other species' comfort levels. River paired with Rin, offering guidance on efficient movement through tight spaces. "Your center of gravity is higher than mine," River explained. "You'll want to adjust your approach angle here to avoid balance issues." It was basic instruction, the kind any teammate might offer. But Rin found himself hyper-aware of River's proximity, his body preparing for threat responses despite his conscious mind knowing there was no danger. River seemed to sense this and maintained slightly more distance than strictly necessary, giving Rin space to adjust. By the end of the 2-hour session, Rin's stress levels had decreased noticeably. Familiarity was replacing instinctive fear, not completely, but enough to function. San worked with Danny, learning to coordinate their vastly different movement styles. The Deepborn's tank-based mobility required completely different tactical considerations than human bipedal movement, but Danny adapted quickly, finding ways to support San's positioning without compromising either's effectiveness. Grell faced the greatest challenge. His furrow instincts kept triggering dominance responses when Brooks moved too quickly or positioned himself in ways that Grell's biology interpreted as threatening. Brooks recognized this immediately and adjusted his behavior, moving more deliberately and maintaining open body language that signaled cooperation rather than competition. 3 weeks into the integration program, Lieutenant Morris authorized the first stress scenario. Nothing approaching condition red intensity, but enough pressure to test whether the alien cadets could maintain function while watching humans operate above baseline capability. The scenario was urban search and rescue, building collapse with simulated casualties trapped in the rubble. Time-sensitive extraction required. The humans would work at condition yellow, partial activation allowing enhanced performance while maintaining team coordination. Rin felt his antenna twitch with anxiety as they geared up. Beside him, River checked his equipment with the same calm efficiency he showed during low-intensity training. The human noticed Rin's nervous movement and paused. "You're going to see me move faster than usual," River said quietly. "My strength-to-weight ratio will change. I'll be making decisions quickly, sometimes without full explanation. If at any point you feel overwhelmed, signal Morris and step out. No judgment, no failure, just data for better training." "I understand," Rin replied, though his body was already preparing stress responses. The scenario began. The simulated building groaned and shifted, creating realistic danger. Sensor readings indicated 4 casualties at different depths in the rubble, each with different injury profiles requiring specific extraction techniques. Morris gave the authorization. Condition yellow, maintain team integration. The change in the humans was immediate but controlled. River's movements became fluid and powerful, lifting debris that should have required mechanical assistance. But he didn't vanish into individual action like in the footage. He coordinated constantly, calling out structural weaknesses for Pella to analyze, working with San to establish stable extraction paths, deferring to Grell's superior strength for specific heavy lifting tasks. Brooks moved through the rubble with absolute confidence, his enhanced spatial awareness allowing him to navigate unstable terrain safely. When he found the first casualty, he didn't extract alone. He waited for San to position his tank properly, then worked with the Deepborn to stabilize the victim before movement. Danny coordinated the overall operation from a tactical oversight position, his enhanced processing speed allowing him to track all team members and casualties simultaneously. But he presented information at a pace the non-humans could absorb, never overwhelming them with data despite his ability to process much faster. Rin worked alongside River on a particularly complex extraction, a victim trapped under a support beam that couldn't be safely moved without risking further collapse. River analyzed the situation in seconds, formulating a plan that involved precise cuts to the surrounding structure. I need you to monitor the stress indicators on the eastern support, River explained, pointing to specific points. When I start cutting, those readings will change. If they spike above safe parameters, we abort and try a different approach. It was a critical role that played to Kyric's sensory capabilities. Rin focused on the task, his specialized vision tracking minute changes in the material structure. River began cutting, his enhanced strength allowing precise control of the plasma torch. The support beam shifted. Rin's reading spiked. "Abort," Rin called out. "Eastern support showing critical stress." River stopped instantly, no hesitation or argument. "Good catch. Alternative approach needed." He studied the situation again, this time consulting with Pella about load redistribution. Together, they developed a new plan that worked perfectly. The extraction succeeded. All 4 casualties recovered safely. The scenario concluded with complete mission success and 0 team casualties. When the simulation ended, Rin realized he'd functioned effectively throughout the entire exercise despite watching River operate well beyond normal parameters. "How do you feel?" Morris asked during the debrief. "Competent," Rin said, surprising himself. "River was intense, but he never stopped being a teammate. I could work with that." Pella's analysis was characteristically thorough. Human enhancement during stress scenarios follows predictable patterns. Once you understand those patterns, you can anticipate rather than react. The fear response diminishes when you can predict behavior. Grell's experience had been different. He'd struggled with Brooks' intensity, his furrow instincts triggering multiple times, but he'd managed them consciously, recognizing the impulses and choosing not to act on them. "It's like fighting yourself while fighting the scenario," he said. "But I stayed functional. That's progress." Morris nodded approvingly. "You've all demonstrated adequate stress tolerance for condition yellow integration. The next phase will introduce more complex scenarios, but I believe you're ready." Word of the successful integration spread through the academy. Other cadets began requesting similar training opportunities. Commander Hallex expanded the program cautiously, screening candidates carefully and maintaining strict protocols. 6 months after the initial viewing, Rin's graduating class participated in a joint exercise that would have been impossible before the integration program. Mixed species teams working seamlessly with human cadets operating at partial enhancement. The humans provided capabilities no other species could match, while the other species contributed their own unique advantages. Pella's analytical processing complemented human intuition. San's aquatic adaptations allowed operations in environments humans struggled with. Grell's natural aggression channeled constructively created devastating combined tactics. And Kyric, like Rin, provided sensory capabilities that enhanced overall team awareness. The exercise was a complete success. More importantly, no cadets experienced psychological trauma. The alien students had learned to work alongside human intensity instead of fleeing from it. River found Rin after the exercise, both of them exhausted but satisfied. "Remember when you filed that petition?" River asked with a slight smile. Rin's antenna drooped with embarrassment. "I was arrogant and ignorant. I apologize for my earlier contempt." "Don't apologize," River said. "You were working with incomplete information. Most species react the same way initially. What matters is that you were willing to learn when presented with facts." "Why do you tolerate the isolation?" Rin asked. "You're kept separate, restricted, constantly monitored. Doesn't that frustrate you?" River considered the question carefully. "The isolation isn't punishment, it's necessity. We're dangerous if we're not properly controlled. Not because we want to be, but because evolution made us that way. The training we receive here teaches us to be teammates instead of just weapons. That's worth the restrictions." Brooks joined them, overhearing the conversation. "Besides, we get the best equipment, the most challenging scenarios, and instructors who actually understand our capabilities. The separation has advantages. Danny approached from another direction, carrying data tablets. Graduation assignments just posted. River, you're assigned to Frontier Defense Station 47, Mixed Species Unit, Command Track. River's expression showed satisfaction. That's a good posting. Lots of actual protection work, minimal politics. Rin, you're assigned to the same station, Danny continued. Looks like they're building integrated units using academy graduates who train together. Rin felt a complex mixture of emotions. Pride at the assignment, anxiety about working long-term alongside humans, but mostly a sense of rightness. They'd learned to function as a team, continuing that in actual service made sense. Pella and San received similar assignments, different stations but all integrated units. Grell was assigned to a specialized assault unit with 3 human operators, a position that would have been unthinkable before the integration program. The graduation ceremony took place in Highwatch's main assembly hall. Commander Hallex presided, his old eyes surveying the cadets who had transformed from arrogant students into capable soldiers. You began this program believing you understood strength, Hallex said in his address. You learned that strength manifests in many forms. Some species bring physical power, others bring analytical capability, still others bring adaptability or specialized senses. Humans bring intensity, the ability to push past normal limitations when protection demands it. He paused, his mandibles clicking with emphasis. But the greatest strength any of you have demonstrated is the willingness to learn from those different from yourselves, to overcome instinctive fear and build understanding, to transform potential enemies into trusted allies. River stood in formation with his human classmates, all of them maintaining careful control even during the emotional ceremony. Across from them, Rin and the other alien graduates stood with equal pride. Between the two groups, an invisible barrier had existed months ago. Now there was only professional respect and hard-earned trust. After the ceremony, the graduates gathered informally in the station's observation deck. The massive windows showed Greystone below, the neutral world that hosted the academy serving as a reminder of the galaxy's diversity. Rin approached the window where River stood watching the planet's rotation. I have a question I've wanted to ask. Go ahead, River replied. In that simulation footage, when Lin was hit and went down, your response became more intense. Why? She was already out of the fight. Escalating didn't help her. River was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. She gave her simulated life protecting me. Human psychology doesn't let that go unanswered. It's not rational. It's not tactical. It's just how we're built. When someone sacrifices for you, you honor that sacrifice by completing the mission they died protecting. But it was a simulation. She wasn't actually dead. Doesn't matter, River said simply. The emotional response is the same. That's why we need such extensive training. We have to learn to channel those responses productively instead of letting them control us. Understanding settled over Rin like a heavy blanket. Humans carried burdens other species didn't. Emotional weights that drove them to extraordinary actions, but also required constant management. The isolation wasn't just about protecting other species. It was about giving humans space to learn to carry their own nature without being crushed by it. Brooks joined them at the window, followed by Pella, San, and Grell. The group stood together, watching the planet below, each processing their own thoughts about the training they'd completed and the service ahead. We ship out in 3 days, Brooks said. Different stations, different missions, but we're all part of the same experiment now. Integrated units working across species lines. The experiment will succeed, Pella said with her characteristic certainty. We have sufficient data to confirm effectiveness. It'll succeed because we'll make it succeed, Grell added, his aggressive nature now channeled into determination rather than hostility. San's tentacles swirled in his tank, creating patterns that his species used to express complex emotions. I learned something these past months. Strength isn't about individual capability. It's about what you can accomplish when different capabilities work together. River smiled. That's the real lesson. Humans aren't special because we're strong. We're valuable because our strength complements what others bring, just like everyone else. The group stood in comfortable silence as Greystone rotated below them. In 3 days they would scatter across the galaxy, carrying with them the lessons learned through mockery, revelation, and eventual understanding. They would serve in integrated units, protecting colonies and maintaining peace across species lines. The ban would remain in effect for new cadets, necessary isolation ensuring proper training. But graduates like River and Rin proved that isolation was temporary. Understanding could be taught, fear could be overcome, and teammates could be found even among species whose evolutionary paths had taken them to vastly different capabilities. Commander Hallex watched from his office, reviewing the graduation reports with satisfaction. The integration program was working, not perfectly but effectively. The galaxy would be safer for it. Protected by soldiers who understood that differences in capability were strengths to be leveraged, not weaknesses to be feared. The humans would continue their careful restraint, their constant self-monitoring, their disciplined control of capabilities that could terrify if unleashed carelessly. But now they would do it alongside teammates who understood why that restraint was necessary and who valued what lay beneath it. Mockery had transformed into respect, fear had evolved into partnership, and the galaxy was better for it.